My name is Daniel Foster, and I'm sitting here in my home office in Austin, Texas, looking at something that still makes me smile every single day. It's a simple web page redirect, but it represents the most satisfying victory of my entire career. Let me tell you how I went from being crushed by corporate betrayal to building something that changed my life forever. To keep listening to this beautiful and special story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from so I can include a special shout out for you in a future story. It was March 15th, 2023. I remember the date because it was supposed to be my 5-year anniversary at TechFlow Solutions. I'd been planning to ask for a promotion that week. The Austin sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our downtown office, casting long shadows across the polished concrete floors. I was reviewing quarterly performance metrics when Brian Caldwell, my boss and the company's VP of operations, knocked on my cubicle wall. "Daniel, can we talk in my office?" His voice had that weird, rehearsed quality that immediately made my stomach drop. You know that tone? The one that means someone's about to deliver news that will change everything. I followed him past the ping-pong table where developers usually decompress during lunch breaks, past the motivational posters about synergy and innovation that every tech company seems required to display, into his corner office with its panoramic view of Lady Bird Lake. The office smelled like expensive leather and that particular brand of corporate confidence that comes with having power over other people's livelihoods. Brian sat behind his massive oak desk, and I noticed he wouldn't make eye contact. Instead, he focused on shuffling through papers that I was pretty sure he wasn't actually reading. "Daniel, I'm gonna be straight with you. We're going through a company restructuring, and unfortunately, your position is being eliminated." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my chest tighten, like someone had punched all the air out of my lungs. "This isn't about your performance, you've been incredible. Your client retention rate is the highest in the department. It's just, business needs have changed." I sat there in that uncomfortable leather chair, stunned into silence. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, 5 years of missing family dinners, weekend barbecues with friends, and promising dates because I believed in this company. I'd helped build our client acquisition system from the ground up, staying late to debug code and optimize processes. I'd trained half the team when they were hired. I'd been the guy they called at 2 a.m. when servers crashed and everything was falling apart. "I don't understand," I managed to say, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Our department just had record numbers last quarter. The Q4 report showed we exceeded targets by 30%. I thought we were expanding, not cutting staff." Brian shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and for the first time in our conversation, his eyes met mine briefly before darting away again. "Look, I know this is hard. These decisions come from way above my pay grade. We're offering a generous severance package, 3 months' salary, and we'd appreciate it if you'd sign this non-disclosure agreement." He slid a thick document across the polished surface of his desk. That's when I knew something was fundamentally wrong. NDAs for layoffs aren't standard, unless someone's trying to hide something significant. In 5 years at TechFlow, I'd never seen anyone asked to sign confidentiality agreements for routine terminations. "Can I review this before signing?" I asked, picking up the document. Of course, take your time. Just, we'd like to have everything wrapped up by end of business today." The urgency felt forced, artificial, like he was reading from a script someone else had written. The next few days were a surreal blur of cleaning out my desk, awkward goodbye hugs from colleagues who looked genuinely shocked by my departure, and trying to process what had happened while maintaining some semblance of professional dignity. My colleagues looked at me with those sympathetic eyes that said, "Glad it wasn't me," while pretending to be supportive. Classic corporate politics: everyone's your friend until the axe falls, then they scatter like roaches when the lights come on. I spent my first week of unemployment in a weird liminal space, waking up at 6 a.m. out of habit, then remembering I had nowhere to go. I'd shower, get dressed in business casual, and then sit at my kitchen table wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with myself. The silence in my apartment was deafening, after years of constant Slack notifications and conference calls. But it was my friend Sarah Martinez from HR who finally told me the truth. She texted me late on a Friday afternoon. "Coffee tomorrow? I think you need to know something." We met at Radio Coffee on Barton Springs Road, one of those quintessentially Austin spots where tech workers decompress and complain about their jobs over overpriced lattes and breakfast tacos. The place smelled like roasted coffee beans, an ambitious startup dream. Sarah looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder like she expected Brian to materialize behind her. "Daniel, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, she said, stirring her cortado with unnecessary intensity. But Brian didn't eliminate your position. He gave it to his nephew, Kevin. Kid just graduated from UT with a business degree and zero actual experience. His biggest qualification is sharing DNA with Brian. The betrayal cut deeper than the firing itself. It wasn't about company restructuring, or budget cuts, or market forces beyond anyone's control. It was about nepotism, plain and simple. Brian had used corporate buzzwords and legal documents to mask the fact that he was placing family loyalty over merit, connection over competence. There's more, Sarah continued, lowering her voice. Kevin's been telling people he's going to modernize the department with some revolutionary new approaches. He wants to implement blockchain solutions for client management, something he apparently learned about in a single elective course. Half the team is already talking about updating their resumes. Jennifer Park asked me about internal transfers yesterday. I felt a complex mixture of anger, validation, and strange relief washing over me. At least now I knew the truth. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't incompetent. I wasn't a casualty of market forces or company-wide cost-cutting measures. I was just collateral damage in someone else's power play, a human sacrifice to family politics. That night, I sat on my apartment balcony, overlooking South Austin, drinking a Lone Star beer and watching the famous bats emerge from under the Congress Avenue Bridge in their nightly exodus. The city I loved suddenly felt different, smaller somehow. Like the dream I'd been chasing for 5 years was just an elaborate illusion designed to keep me running on a hamster wheel. But then something shifted in my thinking. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the prologue to something better. The first month of unemployment was brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. The financial stress was real. Austin isn't cheap, and my savings weren't infinite. But the psychological impact was worse. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. out of pure habit, shower, get dressed, and then remember I had nowhere to go, nothing urgent demanding my attention. The silence was overwhelming after years of constant meetings, deadlines, and crisis management. I started freelance consulting to pay the bills and maintain some semblance of professional purpose. Small businesses that needed help with their digital marketing strategies, inventory management systems, customer relationship tools. It wasn't glamorous, a lot of WordPress customizations and basic automation setups, but it kept me busy and gave me unexpected perspective on what companies really needed. Most of my clients weren't looking for the complicated, expensive enterprise solutions that companies like TechFlow specialized in selling. They wanted simple, effective tools that actually solved real problems without requiring a computer science degree to operate. A Tex-Mex restaurant owner who needed online ordering that integrated with her existing POS system. A local bookstore that wanted to track inventory without paying thousands monthly for software designed for Amazon scale operation. One evening I was working late at Mozart's Coffee on Lake Austin, helping that bookstore owner optimize her customer database, when I had a moment of clarity that would change everything. I was actually enjoying this work more than I'd enjoyed my corporate job in years. I was solving real problems for real people, seeing immediate impact from my efforts, not just shuffling around PowerPoint slides and attending meetings about having meetings about planning future meetings. That's when I started seriously thinking about starting my own company, not just freelancing indefinitely, but building something substantial, a consultancy that would help small and medium-sized businesses compete with bigger players through smart, affordable technology solutions. Everything I'd learned at TechFlow, but applied ethically, efficiently, and with actual concern for client success.
I started sketching out business plans on napkins, researching market opportunities during late-night coffee sessions, and networking with other entrepreneurs in Austin's surprisingly vibrant startup ecosystem. The more I worked on the concept, the more excited I became. This wasn't just about replacing my lost income. It was about building something meaningful, something that aligned with my values instead of fighting against them. But I needed a name, a brand, a digital presence that would establish credibility in a crowded marketplace. And that's when I discovered something that would transform everything. I was doing competitive research for my emerging business concept, trying to understand how established players position themselves in the market. When I decided to check out TechFlow's website, I wanted to see how they were presenting themselves to potential clients, maybe get some inspiration for my own branding approach, possibly identify gaps in their messaging that I could exploit. But when I typed TechFlow solution.com into my browser, I got an error message that made me think I'd mistyped something. This domain may be for sale. I stared at the screen, not believing what I was seeing. I tried different variations: techflowsolutions.com, techflowsolutions.net, even techflowsolutions.org. All available, all for sale, all completely abandoned. How does a 5-year-old company with dozens of employees, millions in annual revenue, and hundreds of clients just lose their primary domain name? It seemed impossible, like discovering that Apple had forgotten to renew Apple.com or that Google had let Google.com expire. I did some detective work and discovered that TechFlow had been using a third-party marketing agency called Digital Boost to manage their web presence, SEO, and online advertising campaign. When they switched to a different agency 6 months earlier, apparently due to some dispute over campaign performance metrics, there had been a miscommunication about who was responsible for renewing the domain registration. The domain had expired 3 weeks ago, and somehow, nobody at TechFlow had noticed. Their website was completely inaccessible, their email addresses weren't working, and their entire online presence had evaporated. Brian Caldwell, the man who'd fired me for restructuring while implementing blockchain solutions through his inexperienced nephew, had been so focused on internal power plays that he'd let his company's most important digital asset slip away completely. I sat there in my apartment, staring at the domain registrar's website, my cursor hovering over the purchase button. The domain was available for $12.99, $12.99, to own the digital identity of the company that had thrown me away like defective equipment. I bought it immediately, hands trembling slightly as I entered my credit card information. With the domain secured, I faced a crucial decision about what to do with this unexpected power. My first instinct was petty revenge. Redirect it to a page explaining how TechFlow treats their loyal employees. Maybe include some screenshots of Brian's dismissive emails, or testimonials from other people who'd been screwed over by corporate politics. But that approach felt small, vindictive, beneath the person I wanted to become. I didn't want to be defined by what someone else had done to me. I wanted to be defined by what I chose to build in response. Instead, I decided to redirect techflowsolutions.com to my new company's website. I would build the consultancy I'd been dreaming about, and every former colleague, every potential client, every person who searched for TechFlow would see what I'd created instead. It would be elegant, professional, and infinitely more satisfying than any angry. I called my company Foster Digital Solutions, and I poured every ounce of energy, creativity, and accumulated expertise into building it properly. I worked 18-hour days, teaching myself advanced web development techniques, creating marketing materials that actually communicated value instead of buzzwords, and reaching out to potential clients with personalized proposals that demonstrated genuine understanding of their challenges. I used everything I'd learned at TechFlow, but implemented it better, more efficiently, more ethically, more focused on measurable results instead of impressive-sounding process improvements. Every system I built was designed to solve actual problems, not just justify consulting fees. My first real client was Maria Santos, who owned a small chain of 3 Tex-Mex restaurants in East Austin. She'd been struggling with online orders that didn't integrate with her kitchen management system, causing constant confusion during busy periods. Customer orders would come through 3 different platforms: her website, DoorDash, and Uber Eats, but nothing talked to anything else. Instead of selling her some complicated enterprise solution that would cost thousands monthly, I built her a simple custom integration system that connected all her ordering platforms to a unified dashboard. The whole project cost less than what TechFlow would have charged for the initial consultation, and it saved her thousands of dollars monthly in reduced mistakes and improved efficiency. Word spread quickly through Austin's tight-knit small business community. Maria referred me to her food supplier, who referred me to their other restaurant clients. Within 3 months, I had a steady stream of customers who actually appreciated the work I was doing, who saw immediate value from my solutions. The best part, every day, I'd get notifications that people were visiting techflowsolutions.com and being automatically redirected to my site. Former clients searching for support, competitors checking on TechFlow's latest offerings, potential employees looking for job opportunities, all seeing what I'd built from the ashes of my corporate betrayal. It was a Tuesday morning in July, almost 4 months after I'd been fired, when my phone rang with a number I recognized. but hadn't seen in months. The caller ID showed Brian Caldwell's name, and for a moment, I seriously considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity got the better of me. "Daniel, this is Brian Caldwell. We need to talk." His voice was completely different from the confident, corporate speak tone I remembered. There was strain there, almost desperation. The casual authority he'd wielded during our last conversation had evaporated. "What can I do for you, Brian?" I kept my tone professionally neutral, but I was definitely smiling. "Look, I know things ended awkwardly between us, but we have a serious situation here. Our website traffic has completely tanked over the past few months, and we just discovered that our domain is somehow redirecting your company." "That's correct. Daniel, you need to transfer that domain back to us immediately. This is corporate sabotage, intellectual property theft. I'll have our legal team contact you if necessary, but I'd prefer to handle this professionally." The threat was weak, almost half-hearted. He knew as well as I did that I'd acquired the domain legally, when it became available due to their own negligence. "Brian," I interrupted calmly, "I purchased that domain through a legitimate registrar when it became available. If your company failed to renew its registration, that's not my problem. And threatening me with lawyers isn't going to change the legal reality of the situation." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing heavily, probably realizing that his intimidation tactics weren't going to work. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You fired me to give my job to your nephew. You made me sign an NDA to cover up your nepotism. And then you were so busy playing favorites that you let your company's domain expire because nobody was paying attention to basic business operations. Daniel, please, Kevin's, the blockchain initiative didn't work out as planned. We're hemorrhaging clients. 3 of our biggest accounts terminated their contracts last month. The team is falling apart. I made a mistake, okay? I'll admit it. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely sorry for him. But sympathy doesn't undo betrayal, and it doesn't change the fundamental truth about character. I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties, Brian, but I'm not interested in selling the domain. I'm building something important here, and your former clients seem to appreciate what I'm offering." Word about my conversation with Brian spread through Austin's interconnected tech community faster than gossip at South by Southwest. Within a week, I started getting calls and messages from my former colleagues at TechFlow, people I'd worked alongside for years but hadn't heard from since my firing. First was Jennifer Park, the most analytically brilliant person I'd ever worked with. She'd been passed over for promotion 3 times despite consistently delivering exceptional results. Always told she needed to develop more leadership presence or improve her communication style. Code words for being too direct and not politically savvy enough for TechFlow's boys club culture. "Daniel, I heard what you did with the domain situation. That's absolutely legendary," she said when we met for drinks at Whistler's, one of those East Austin cocktail bars where tech workers go to feel sophisticated. "I also heard you're building something special with Foster Digital. Then came Marcus Thompson, a brilliant full-stack developer who'd been increasingly frustrated by TechFlow's outdated development practices and bureaucratic approval processes. He'd been working on side projects for months, dreaming of joining a startup that actually valued innovation over politics. "I don't care about matching my current salary," he told me over breakfast tacos at Veracruz All Natural. "I want to build something that matters. And I want to work with people who respect what I bring to the table instead of treating me like a replaceable resource." Within 2 months, I had a team of 5 former TechFlow employees who'd chosen to bet on Foster Digital Solutions instead of staying with the sinking ship. We were lean, hungry, and united by a shared vision of what business could be when it's done with integrity and genuine concern for results. We rented a small office space in East Austin. Nothing fancy, just exposed brick walls, secondhand furniture from estate sales, and a high-end espresso machine that Marcus insisted we needed to fuel the revolution. The space cost 1/10 of what TechFlow spent on their downtown corporate headquarters, but it felt more like home than their polished offices ever had. Every morning we'd gather around our conference table, a piece of reclaimed wood mounted on industrial pipe legs, and plan our day. No corporate hierarchy, no pointless status meetings, no politics, just talented people focused on solving problems and building something meaningful. Our breakthrough came in September when Amanda Rodriguez, the CEO of a mid-sized logistics company called Southwest Supply Chain, reached out through our website contact form. She'd been working with TechFlow for 2 years and was increasingly frustrated with their lack of responsiveness and tendency to over-engineer solutions to simple problems. "I found your company when I was trying to reach TechFlow for support," she told me during our first meeting at her warehouse facility in South Austin. "Their website redirected me to yours, and honestly, I'm glad it did. What I'm seeing in your portfolio looks more innovative and practical than anything they ever showed me." Amanda's company needed a complete overhaul of their supply chain management system. They were tracking inventory across 4 warehouses using a combination of Excel spreadsheets, paper logs, and an outdated database system that crashed regularly. It was exactly the kind of complex, high-value project that TechFlow would have overcomplicated with unnecessary features and overcharged for with consulting fees. Instead, we approached it completely differently. We spent weeks understanding their actual workflow, not just their perceived needs. We shadowed warehouse workers, interviewed truck drivers, analyzed their busiest processing periods. We built a custom solution that integrated seamlessly with their existing systems, instead of forcing them to replace everything and retrain their entire workflow. The system we delivered was elegant in its simplicity: real-time inventory tracking, automated reorder alerts, driver route optimization, and comprehensive reporting that actually helped them make better decisions. We delivered it on time, under budget, and with training that got their team productive immediately. The results were immediate and dramatic. Amanda's company cut their processing time by 40%, reduced operational costs by $200,000 annually, and eliminated the inventory discrepancies that had been costing them thousands monthly. More importantly, they loved working with. We weren't just vendors collecting fees. We were partners invested in their success. "This is what I thought I was getting from TechFlow," Amanda told me when we wrapped up the implementation. "You guys actually care about whether this works in the real world, not just whether it sounds impressive in a presentation." That project became our calling card. Amanda referred us to other CEOs in her network, and soon we were competing for contracts that would have been impossible for me to land as a solo freelancer. Our reputation was building organically through results, not marketing promises. It was December, almost 9 months after I'd been fired, when I received an email that made me laugh out loud in my office. Brian Caldwell was reaching out again, but this time it wasn't about the domain situation. "Daniel, I know we've had our differences, but I'm writing to see if Foster Digital Solutions would be interested in a partnership opportunity. TechFlow is looking for qualified subcontractors to help with overflow work, and your company has developed an excellent reputation in the Austin market. Perhaps we could schedule a call to discuss mutually beneficial arrangements." I read the email 3 times, trying to process what I was seeing. The man who'd fired me 9 months earlier was now asking to hire my company. The company that had eliminated my position was now seeking to partner with the business I'd built from that elimination. I called a team meeting that afternoon. Jennifer, Marcus, and the rest of our crew gathered in our small conference room, and I read Brian's email aloud. The silence that followed was pregnant with possibility and irony. "So," I said when I finished, "the company that eliminated my position wants to pay us to do work they can't handle themselves. Thoughts?" Marcus was the first to speak, grinning wide. "I say we charge them double our normal hourly rate. Premium pricing for premium irony." Jennifer shook her head. "More pragmatic. I say we don't work with them at all. Why give them the credibility of associating with us? Their reputation in the industry is already damaged." But I had a different idea, one that felt more strategically interesting. "What if we take the meeting, but we use it as an opportunity to recruit their remaining talent? If they're outsourcing work to us, that means they're struggling internally." That's exactly what we did. We met with Brian and his remaining team members, listened politely to their partnership pitch, and declined their outsourcing offer professionally. But we also made it clear that Foster Digital was always looking for talented individuals who wanted to work in a more collaborative, respectful environment where merit mattered more than politics. 3 more TechFlow employees joined us over the following month. Today, 18 months after that devastating firing, Foster Digital Solutions employs 23 people and generates over $3 million in annual revenue. We've helped dozens of small and medium-sized businesses transform their operations through intelligent technology solutions. We've been featured in Austin Business Journal as one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the city, and our client retention rate is 9. But the real victory isn't the money or the recognition or even the professional validation. It's the culture we've built, a place where people are valued for their contributions, where innovation is encouraged and rewarded, where success is measured by the positive impact we have on our clients' lives and businesses. TechFlow, meanwhile, has struggled significantly. They've lost more than half their client base and had to lay off most of their staff. Kevin Caldwell, Brian's nephew, left the company after 6 months when his blockchain initiatives failed to produce any measurable results. The modernization he'd promised turned into expensive consultants and software licenses that nobody knew how to use effectively. I still own techflowsolutions.com, and I still redirect it to our website. Not out of spite anymore, but as a reminder of how quickly things can change when you're not paying attention to what really matters: your people, your clients, your fundamental business operations. Last month I received one final email from Brian. He was leaving TechFlow to start his own consulting firm, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in having coffee to discuss lessons learned and industry insights. I agreed to meet him at the same radio coffee where Sarah had told me the truth about my firing, almost 2 years. When Brian walked in, he looked older, more worn down, humbled by the experience of watching his company crumble while mine flourished. "Daniel, I owe you an apology," he said before he'd even sat down. "What I did to you was wrong. I let family loyalty cloud my judgment, and I've paid a heavy price for that decision." The company paid an even heavier price. I looked at this man who'd once held my career in his hands, who'd dismissed me with corporate buzzwords and legal threats. Now he was asking for forgiveness, maybe even hoping for advice, or some kind of professional resurrection. "I appreciate that, Brian, and I forgive you. But I need you to understand something. Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to discover what I was really capable of when I wasn't constrained by corporate politics and artificial limitation." We talked for over an hour about business, about leadership mistakes, about the importance of treating people with respect and recognizing that your employees are human beings, with dreams and families and feelings, not just resources to be optimal. When we parted ways, I didn't feel anger or even satisfaction. I felt something I hadn't expected: genuine gratitude. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you'll ever do. That domain redirect still makes me smile every day. Not because it represents revenge, but because it represents something much more powerful: the ability to transform betrayal into opportunity, failure into fuel, endings into beginning.